All right, it says I'm live. Just waiting for this to come up in YouTube. And Shauner, I am very, very happy that you're using this as an excuse not to go to jury duty. Was I not live when I was talking? Someone let me know. If not, I'm very happy for you, Shauner. You're doing your part and fighting the man. So it's going to be a solo stream tonight. Unfortunately, Nick is no longer part of Black Lodge Games. We've had a bit of a falling. I'm just kidding. He's just traveling. April Fools, if you will. All right. Let's see here. Anyone out there? Or is my chat broken? That'd be even worse if I was just sitting here and I had to talk to myself. Let me check on YouTube on my phone. Get the source of truth here. Black Lodge Games, your channel. Says I'm live. Interesting. Nothing in the chat, although I can see Shauner's comments. Bizarre. Well, if the chat doesn't work, then... Hey, all right, cool. Nick is really in one of your escape rooms, yeah. He's currently dungeon delving. Turn this down. Josh Butler, hello. Wandering Mage, yo. Yeah, Nick's traveling. I was traveling last week, but I was thinking about some stuff last night, working on a blog post for the website, which is up and running now. Got it up and running, the most basic possible implementation on Shopify that we could possibly do. So there's really no content. I can, you know what? I can actually, I think, share that right now. Go check this out together. blacklodgegames.com. And let me see if I can share this, not like a boomer. Present. Share screen. Chrome tab. There we go. I wonder if I can make this bigger. There we go. Yeah, so we got our basic website set up. As you can see here, we got our homepage, latest video from YouTube, and our blog. Current post is this long. Welcome to Black Lodge Games. We're on a mission from God to bring high-level immersion to tabletop role-playing games. No apologies, no compromises. We have a contact form in case you want to send us an email. And we also have an alternate form in the complaints department. So, you know, if we point out how incredibly wrong you are, or if you're extremely jealous of our Adonis-like visages, you can let us know here. And there's going to be a lot more to come soon. Like I said, we got the blog going, and I'm working on a post right now about social mechanics in tabletop RPGs. It's going to be really long, like really, really long. I've been thinking about this whole reaction roles thing for months, and especially after our stream with Pundit a couple of weeks back, where we talked about this in depth. I've also on the channel like cut that into like its own segment, its own video. I think it's called like OSR Social Mechanics or something. That really got me thinking about social mechanics in other games, and how I think the real problem that I've had with the whole reaction roles thing in OSR games has been pretty strongly linked to the fact that I really hate social mechanics in all RPGs. But this was such a different take than all the games that I'm used to playing, which are basically like the player makes some sort of a manipulation roll or, you know, diplomacy roll or something like that, and it's essentially all on the player character's kind of attack, if you will, that reversing it to the target and simply coming up with their reaction to whatever happened seemed very odd. And the other big thing is that, like I said in that segment with Pundit, most of my exposure to this rule has been through his games, which makes the extensive use of reaction rolls, whereas it's probably not as important in other games. Like he really implies that you should be using these in social encounters with NPCs, not simply for gauging just the general disposition of a character or just the hostility level of a monster in a dungeon or something like that, but that it can be used in extended and more complex social interactions. So I've been thinking about that a whole lot, and I still think that I was right all along, which I don't think will be a surprise to anybody. But on the flip side, I do think that the reaction roll mechanic, kind of as explained through Pundit and through, to a lesser extent, it was mostly through that conversation. To a lesser extent, his book, Social Encounters Along the Silk Road, actually is superior to most other social mechanics in other games. And superior in like a fairly significant manner. The problem is I don't generally make use of those mechanics anyway, because I am really into role playing, and that includes being in the moment and trying to get in the mindset of all of the NPCs. The whole way that we play is basically trying to be in a flow state as much as possible. And adding in roles to that really dramatically takes you out of that. And yeah, so I don't know. There's a whole lot I have to say on that, but I'm still putting it together in a way that is easily articulable. Dice Master, hey man, what's good? Not a whole lot. I mean, it's just boiling in Texas. It's been boiling for quite a while now, and it does not seem like it's going to get any better for a while. It is like, usually I take my dog out for a walk around 5:30, but it's still like 107 degrees outside at that time, and she just melts. So it's kind of disturbed my schedule a bit, and her schedule. Nick knows what you did this summer. Yes, yeah, he actually does. That's true. Nick does know what I did this summer. Social combat works best, I've seen, in Total Party Skills RPG. I haven't seen that, and I have used social combat mechanics in Exalted, and it's I usually think that's social combat is stupid and doesn't really make sense conceptually, but in a game like Exalted, in the genre it's in, it being this kind of over the top anime style, essentially that's a big component of it. I think it actually does make sense, especially since you're using you have all of these like social techniques and charms and abilities and powers you can use. And I feel like it fits in that world, but it's not a system that you can just port to other games willy-nilly. Shauner says he doesn't use reaction rolls. Yeah, neither do I for the most part. I'm going to give it a shot again. My Lion and Dragon game is picking back up now that basically everybody who was playing was going on vacation in like successive weeks. So we're all back and done with that. So that's picking up in a week or two on the weekend, and I will be using it there, and I'm going to be attempting to use it in the style of Pundit's Social Encounters Along the Silk Road, but we'll see how much mileage I actually get out of that, simply because I do think it'll disrupt the flow. I might use it if in the case of like if I am kind of stumped or put on the spot, or there's some new character that we've never met or something like that. I might use it there, but we'll just have to see how it comes out and play. Yeah, but yeah, it is absolutely boiling in Texas. It's absolutely boiling in my apartment right now, and the AC is cranked to the max and has been going for weeks. So it's rough out here. Either your character has a reputation or belongs to a faction, or they don't. No roles needed. Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, if you're trying to do something like bribe someone or seduce them or convince them, basically intimidate them, it's not immediately clear that that's always going to work. And if it does come over convincingly in the role play, then I don't see the need for a role. Uh, and that's how we like to play, and that's why I generally like to play with strong role players. Can't back up too much. I'll run over my dog. She's sitting right behind the wheels. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I think it kind of depends, especially if those things start to be influenced by abilities in a game. If you have some means of like supernatural influence over someone's mind, um, or you've done some sort of uh, magic that basically changes how people perceive you, then a role might be called for because that it is. There are circumstances. It's sort of like combat, in that we use the rules, we use the roles to simulate that the frantic nature of combat and the unpredictability, and use them when something interesting might happen, where we need some sort of a neutral arbiter there. And I do think that there are places in social encounters that do call for that. Um, but for the most part, I find that these rules generally end up destroying roleplay, rather than enhancing them. And you might not be able to get around that. I'm not sure. Again, I'm still thinking about it. Um, but at any rate, we're getting really close to getting monetized on this channel, which is really fun. I'm pretty excited. So we have, like I said, we set up our Shopify store. There's nothing to sell there yet, but we will be hawking merch very soon. Dice Master. I think how many games are born is from DM fiat. So extensive it leads to a system. But players have never done this together to birth a system. I think that's why your game experience is like many. I solved much of this, ironically, by watching the film Courage Channel. If 99% of scriptwriters fail before page 10, then a game master needs to help for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of movies, yeah, if your script sucks from page 1, you're you're in real trouble. There's not no amount of acting, no amount of visual effects or anything can overcome that. It's literally the most important part of a movie. And so in the same way, I think that it's to a lesser extent in role playing games, but it's still vitally important. If you don't have the right people, if you don't have the right players, um, then your game might not be salvageable anyway. It's which is sad. Um, but there is a lot that you can do within a role playing game, within the structure of a role playing game, to still have fun and do and make something happen. But it's if you are missing the fundamental building blocks of what makes a good game, you're kind of fucked. Film Courage for the win. I'll have to look this up. Film Courage. YouTube channel. Subscribed. Subscribe to the bell to get more notifications. Speaking of, I just got some notifications on Twitter. Yeah, so I was on Twitter today. I did not make anyone mad today. I wasn't just out there stirring the pot, but I did ask some questions about the BrOSR game style, because I see a lot of these people posting about their braunsteins and whatnot, and talking about how AD&D First Edition rules is written is the one true way, the only way to have a good, the ultimate RPG experience, the top of the mountain, the peak performance, the ultimate style of play. And I think they're crazy, because what they're describing sounds not very interesting to me. But I am interested in what the ideas actually are. Given that there's been a whole lot of insane drama around it recently, that I would rather not be a part of. Each player puts in their 100%. Yeah, absolutely. If everybody puts in 100%, then you're going to be ahead of the curve. Four corners of conflict plus the trinity of opposition is easy for RPG storytelling, but structure is scaffolding for emergent player story. Yeah, I mean, I think the structure of a story in an RPG, and I know I don't have to explain what story is to my audience. Uh, I think it comes mostly from the setting and from the mechanics. The mechanics definitely absolutely matter and inform what the game is going to be like, but the setting itself is what is going to give you things to do, and interesting things to interact with. And out of that, you'll have something interesting that can be called a story afterwards. But I don't think that there is like a narrative structure that you can put in a role playing game without kind of breaking the nature of the role playing game and making it into something that it's not, and kind of crushing player agency. I totally agree with that, man. Well said. Yeah, I agree too. Thank you. I did say that well, whichever thing it was. AD&D has a sublime sub-mechanic attached to ability scores. It's modular and expandable. Yeah, and this is something that one of the things that someone said recently about AD&D, and because there's been like people talking about mass combat rules in different systems, and I think part of this came up maybe because Macrease did a video on mass combat rules in Acts 2, which I'm interested in getting. But again, it's like I've got so many things that I'm reading already that it's it's just adding to the never ending pile of books that it will probably take me years to finish. But his game apparently seems to be one of the more the kind of modern versions of these games, or modern games rather, that has a very good handle on mass combat. Whereas people were saying in AD&D, you already have mass combat rules. It's just chainmail basically, which is compatible with AD&D. So it's like you have a war game inside, maybe not directly inside AD&D, but that is cool. And it is modular and expandable, and it can. I understand the BrOSR guys when they're talking about running these braunsteins and large numbers of interconnected campaigns and parties, that it does make sense to me that you would want to play that rules as written, or at least decide on what the rules are. Write down the rules that you're going to use and respect, because that can cause a lot of problems especially if you're doing it across groups. I use Enneagrams for player-driven character arcs. Enneagrams. Yeah, I still haven't looked that up. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times on the channel, but I have not had time to look that up. Shauner says, setting has NPCs with stories players might partially get involved in. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the key components of a good setting, is I think providing interesting NPCs and interesting factions for the game master to use and draw, not only to use directly in the game, but to draw inspiration from. And these people are basically operating in the world as while the players are too. So they are affecting the world. Their plans will kind of unfold and possibly get foiled or interfered with by players. But that provides something going on, even if the players aren't directly involved and directly like responsible for that piece of the action in the game. NPC stories will change depending on what players do. Exactly. Yeah. When players interact with them. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is it's not even necessarily a story. It's like you have maybe a short history of this character and what they are currently up to at the start of the game, and their goals and their plans, and they're going to act upon those things. You set the world has been set in motion. They are going to presumably try and do these things. If the players get caught up in that, then whatever the plan is might change completely. They might, the NPC might get murdered by the players or someone else as a result of their actions. So it's a way of contributing to the premise of the game. and you want a good premise. And so that's why you want a strong setting. NPC goals, exactly. Then you think of factions, think of Seek and Destroy by Metallica. Factions in opposition seek and destroy items held by the rival. Yeah, that's a great way to do it, for sure. But let me see if I can present this one more time. Oh, this is absolutely not the tweet I was looking at. God damn it. I'm screwing this up. Today, I was tweeting about the BrOSR. You know, I hit them with the hashtag, so I knew that some of them would come in here. And I know that I'm followed by a couple of them. But I asked, has anyone in the BrOSR played in large-scale VTM LARPs, being Vampire the Masquerade live-action roleplay? Back in the heyday of White Wolf, there were globe-spanning, interconnected LARP campaigns going on through the Camarilla. The systems are obviously very different, but the interconnected world with player-driven games aren't exactly new. And yeah, this is the thing that I'm not really understanding about the BrOSR, is that they essentially they're kind of claiming multiple things at the same time that aren't exactly compatible in my mind. That um, they have rediscovered how AD&D was played by Gygax, which is, I think, very much up for for debate and dispute. And simultaneously, that they've radically innovated. They're radically innovating RPGs right now and how they're played. Except that they're not, because people have already done it even recently. But maybe they're doing like some slight tweaks. I don't really get it. There seem to be some conflicting claims here. But in this this thread, I got some responses and said that basically the first one, this guy Daydream Tiger said, yes, and it's been discussed quite a bit. Vampire the Masquerade LARP, like the Camarilla, or I don't remember what this one is, but OWBN, something by night, has many of the One World by Night is what it is. Has many of the characteristics of a grand campaign and uses methodology like that the BrOSR recommends as far as time, multiple characters, etc. I responded that there was a large-scale VTM game run on YouTube via Google Hangouts about a decade ago that I was a part of for a short time. Shauner, I know, remembers this. It was the Vampire the Masquerade YouTube experiment. Basically, this had, I think, at least 100 players in it, organized through the RPG Brigade Facebook group to run a citywide, setting-wise, citywide Vampire the Masquerade game where what would be every NPC in a single game is someone's character. So you're all playing vampire characters. The kind of admins of the group were playing some of the higher level characters that were like elders or had positions of power. And the game did not have any sort of a set arc or campaign. Like there was kind of a premise to the recent history of the city, and then everything was kind of set wild, and the players were completely directing where the game was going. I'll get to that in a moment, because that wasn't quite true as it turned out, but it was very interesting. It was basically like taking this large scale LARP and bringing it online to people who couldn't all meet in person. So it was people playing from like across the world. There was some timekeeping, and it was very interesting because you had so many people playing with so many different and varied goals, that a lot of really unexpected stuff happened. So I understand the desire to try and create these braunstein style games, these large scale style games. I don't think that that's the pinnacle of RPG play, though. It's not, in my opinion, because you're always going to be dragged down by the lowest common denominator in the game. That's just the way it is. And the more people that you're opening it up to, the more chances you have that you're going to get a bunch of knuckleheads in there, and bring the entire experience down, for the important people like me. And I don't think that there's any way to really argue against that. That's That's what happens. A big tent, creates a circus. That's all it is, in my opinion. Now, in terms of the style of game that the BrOSR people are advocating for, uh, the kind of dedication that it takes to play in these games, I do think that that serves as a filter for getting rid of maybe the kinds of people that they don't want to play with just to begin with. And that's fine. So maybe it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it probably is. Shauner said he watched the streams of the Vampire the Masquerade YouTube experiment. I'm so sorry for you for doing that. Dice Master. See, Gary Gygax never used Six Sigma. He knew the D20 matched several story features, but he designed the game for his fiat, like how a mob adds rules to control the mafia. It had a spreadsheet of where all the players were supposed to be, if I remember. Yeah, that's true. The entire city had its territory carved out because that's very important in Vampire the Masquerade. You are not allowed to really set foot in other people's territory. Certainly not allowed to hunt in other people's territory without some serious consequences. It's all about property rights. Some of the streams had randos in them. A lot of the streams had randoms, and it was pretty bad. It's one of the reasons that I ended up leaving that game. Biggest reason was that in the early stages of the game, they had set it up that in the city there was this oil rig off the coast of the city that was controlled by the prince, who's basically like king, for lack of a better term, in vampire society. And I was playing this bomb throwing anarchist, like 19th century style anarchist, not like some, Antifa loser. And I was an anarch in the game who's opposed to the Camarilla and wants, to tear down that power structure. So I was like, let's go bomb it. Like, I got the rest of the anarchs together. I was like, let's bomb this thing. And we had to clear that through like the admin of like the anarch group, basically, because this was something that would require like some sort of adjudication. We can't just go say, oh, we blew it up, you have to actually go out and role play that out and have someone sort of being a GM in that case. So we go out there, we successfully bomb this oil rig, cause an ecological disaster, make it back to the city by the skin of our teeth. And then later we see Matt Dawkins, who's playing the prince at the time, who's over on the Onyx Path channel, I believe now. He witnesses this blow up. It's his pet project. And he's like, oh my God, my oil rig has been blown up. He goes, well, that's okay because I have insurance. So actually I'm financially gaining from this. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I was like, this had no impact. This had literally no impact. It was extremely frustrating because, first of all, having insurance, that's not going to make up for the massive ecological damage, the huge disruption to your finances. It was so stupid. And that really soured it for me because I thought that it was going to be like everyone really being able to make an impact, and I was going to make an impact because that was what my character was built around. I was like, I'm going to tear this down. I'm going to cause problems for everyone. I was fully expecting to get killed, which I did shortly after because one of my compatriots who helped me on the mission basically was a pussy and wasn't down with blowing up the oil rig after we did it and was like, we have to turn ourselves in. And I said no. So we had a fight. We rolled it out. He won. And he subdued me and he brought me before the prince and I got executed. And then I never played again. I was out after that. It was really fucking lame. But there was a lot of other interesting stuff happening in it. And people were like, holy shit, like someone's already bombing something. Like there was a lot of interesting stuff coming out of that. So I understand, although it was an imperfect example of how this is implemented, I get the drive to have so many players and the so-called patrons kind of directing the world outside of just the GM handling all of that. It adds an element of the unexpected that not even the GM can come up with. And it is pretty cool. Like I can't say that that's not cool. I can say though that in practice, it doesn't always work, and it doesn't deliver on that promise. And I think there's a lot of reasons to think that it won't deliver on that promise most of the time. Because again, it's just going to come down to the quality of the people that you're playing with. And it's hard to find good role players. So anyway, I've been rambling about that for a while. Oh, we read that one already. Had a spreadsheet. Yep. They had randos. They certainly did have randos. And that's the other thing. There was so much cringe in that game. So much cringe. And I did not want to be a part of that. Because it's just, I hate playing with bad people. Oh my God. It just ruins the game. It sours it so much. I would rather not roleplay and not play these games than play in a bad game. Andre was an admin. I don't know who that is. What's up, fellas? Not much written lies. We're just talking about Vampire the Masquerade's history of braunsteins. Some conversations I had with some BrOSR people today, and that's about it. And social mechanics and stuff. Employee of the month does work in corporations. Doesn't I mean? I don't know what you're saying, Shauner. Favoritism killed the experiment. Yeah, favoritism did kill the experiment. And you're always going to have to, that will always be a risk. I think, again, it's like if you have good GMs, if you have good players, that generally isn't a problem, but it's hard to find good people. And if you find subpar people, which is very likely going to be the case, then it will just drag the entire experience down for everyone. And I don't know that there's a way around that. It's one of the reasons I like smaller groups and smaller tables. That's probably lower on the list, though, of just wanting to find the correct people for the correct game. But it is a reason. Yeah, so I continued talking to these people. I said, I was a part of this game for a short time. Interplay between all the different players was interesting, but it didn't grab me as a format that I would want for my bread and butter game. There's a certain appeal to it, but it doesn't strike me as having rediscovered fire in the way that the BrOSR guys talk about it when running a braunstein. This guy says that's because Mind's Eye Theater type social games are only but one part of the puzzle. And I hate it when people talk cryptically like this. Oh, I'm not even sharing the fucking thing. There we go. Yeah, I hate. Let's see. What'd Shauner say? One rule was Dawkins' character can't be killed. I remember that one. Yeah, that's so fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid. I don't remember that, but that sounds about right. That's the thing. If you're playing the prince in a game of vampire and everyone else is playing a character, you should be absolutely paranoid at all times. That's part of the feel of vampire anyway. And so the idea that like he can't be killed it's completely antithetical to the game anyway. Like as at its just the base of the game is incompatible with that rule. It's such horseshit. Oh, I'm so mad. Just remembering this stuff. But yeah, this guy, he says that's because the Mind's Eye Theater type social games are only but one part of the puzzle. And this is, I hate it when people talk like this, when they fucking talk cryptically about what is so special about these games. It's like, say what you mean, be clear about it, or you're absolutely going to like I'm not going to listen to you or take you seriously ever. It's super annoying. Wandering Mage says, my oil rig blew up. Oh no, let me ignore any real drawback and only benefit. Sounds like ego and favoritism. That's exactly it. And that was like the illusion of how interesting this game was could be was shattered immediately and forever. Yeah, okay. So in response to that guy, I said, yeah, I very much doubt this for a multitude of reasons. It's not just that it's the Mind's Eye Theater games are only a piece of the puzzle. I guess I didn't respond to him. Fine. Why don't you reserve judgment until you try the formula for yourself? And it's like, I fucking have already. I have played D&D many times. I have played the large scale social game. I can conceive in my mind what combining these two things might look like, what it might be like. This whole thing of like, you don't know what it's like until you try it, until you try the exact formula that I've put forward. You just don't know what it's like. It's stupid. I have a brain. I know I have a brain. I can evaluate your ideas on their own merits. I don't have to try everything. It's like if someone, made a shit sandwich and was like, "You should try this." I'd be like, "That's a shit sandwich, though." And they were like, "Yeah, you just haven't tried it, though." It's like I, at some level, we can evaluate things before we actually try it. The spreadsheet got leaked to some players, then the experiment died. Players were jealous of other players. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Daydream Tiger. We have one blind man exploring the elephant, meeting another blind man exploring the elephant. The first is rightly incensed that nobody told him about this huge thing that was here the whole time, and baffled that everyone else in town denies the existence of the elephant. What the fuck are you even talking about? I really, I just say what you mean. There's all this. It's so irritating when people talk like that. Mr. Wargaming responded, yes, to the initial question about whether or not they played the vampire LARPs. Yes, and we learned a lot from people who are deep into that scene and have said so quite often. We've never been shy about rediscovering abandoned techniques and applying those old tricks in new ways. The BrOSR is very magnanimous. And then he said, there's another factor to consider here. And he posted this. This was from a thread quite a while ago that I think might have been about an armor class or something. And the BrOSR, let's see what it was. We got Pundit here talking about one-to-one time. Okay, yeah, it was an alchemical raker thing about one-to-one time. But it says, Braunstein pre-exists those others, so calling it a rediscovery of a later development is kind of stupid, in my opinion. This LARP also had Braunstein elements, would be better. I said, Braunstein wasn't being run with dozens of players across months or years of play, to my knowledge, so I'm not sure if I agree with this. Jeffro then says, OD&D describes a Braunstein. I haven't read OD&D, so I have no idea. I haven't read it, so I can't comment, but virtually no one I know who played during the era of early D&D describes anyone playing a game remotely as described by the BrOSR. Crafty then says, if you haven't watched it yet, go watch Secrets of Blackmoor. Braunsteins and large club patron play are part of the primordial soup of D&D and RPGs. And I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, Braunstein was absolutely... Like, you can't watch that movie and come away and say it had nothing to do with D&D. It absolutely did. And large club play was a huge part of the birth of D&D. And he even says in a subsequent tweet later for a different question that the club culture, though, was limited to the city where all of this was birthed, or the Twin Cities, or whatever the hell it is. And that's not how the game largely was played outside of that geographic region. I think you didn't have I mean, you get conventions and things like that happen for sure. We still have that, but almost everybody played around the table with their friends in their small towns. Because we didn't have the internet, we didn't have the ability or enough interest in all places to get these big clubs going. I know that the first edition DMG says something like, this is a game for 5 to 50 players. And I get that, but I'm not quite sure how often it was played in this style. Crossface did, let's see, let me check it on the chat. Did I miss anything? JD Salvage probably didn't try it either. That was the guy who I was responding to earlier. Large club play was just tournaments is all. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, like the whole idea of like these ongoing campaigns. Like, I know there's like the West Marches style games where you do have multiple parties playing within the same game world. And it's not really clear to me how the BrOSR stuff is any different than that. other than maybe there's like another, like a higher layer of this like patron play. But it seems like this is another thing where they're like, we're innovating, we're doing this. And it's like, you're doing something that's basically been done before. That doesn't mean it's bad. That's not the reason it would be bad necessarily, but it doesn't seem new or innovative to me. Not all DMs were using CompuServe. Exactly. What did you miss? Not a whole lot. I mean, I talked a little bit about the website is up. We've got no content on it at the moment, and we're talking about BrOSR stuff. No, Crispy, Nick is actually not part of Black Lodge Games anymore. No, I'm just kidding. He's on vacation. He's traveling today. So, and I was traveling last week. But I wanted to stream because I had this long, lengthy conversation on Twitter today. Yeah, and then this is someone talking about how the BrOSR people were drawing from VTM LARPs, which was cool. There was some other. This is the thing about Twitter, is these fucking threads go everywhere. Oh yeah, Jeffro hawking his book, which also there's not even a PDF of this. I'm not gonna buy your paperback, man. That's just not gonna happen. This is the other thing. It's like if someone's like, well, what do you mean by this? And you're like, read my book. No, I'm not doing that. Every early D&D players almost immediately abandoned solid play and proven techniques. It wasn't until 40 years later that a band of plucky adventurers picked up the discards and made something amazing out of them. And then I asked, what is the theory as to why this style of play, this very early style of play that is apparently so superior in every way to the modern game and everything like that, why was it abandoned so quickly if it was clearly superior? And then Jeffro hawks his book again. It's a complex argument. We're done going over it with every single critic, which I do get that. But I said, or someone can give me a concise summary in 280 characters. And I'm not even criticizing it yet, which is true. Then he said no, which is my response. And this dude said, don't waste your time. People ignored bits of his text they didn't like or didn't understand. As a result, never reproduced his results. Speaking about Gygax. The proof and the context of this happening is all in Jeffro's book. It's the entire point of it, really. I don't care. But Crafty says, if you haven't watched... Oh, no, we already got to that. God damn it. This is the thing about fucking Twitter, man. I don't know. There's a lot more to this thread, though. Some interesting stuff came out of it. I got quote tweeted at some point, and I tried to find out who was quote tweeting me, and it was like, there's nothing to see here. And so then I had to look incognito to see who it was, because I was like, this person blocked me or something. And it was Gelatinous Rube, who's just muted on our Twitter. So he was I don't know if maybe he might be responding in other places on the thread. maybe not. But if he's talking about us, he's basically, as far as we're concerned, he's shouting into the void. Did Dragon Mag mention any of this happening? That's where the players would have heard of it. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe it's possible that it was in Dragon Magazine, or if there was a shitload of just like these tiny zines at that time. Maybe there's evidence of it there, but I don't see it. Nobody that I know that played in that era has ever heard of this or played like this. It just seems kind of crazy to claim that this was what the game was meant to do. There's another discussion somewhere in the threading of Twitter where we kind of talked about, someone brought up the fact that, they started producing modules, which were clearly not meant for this style of play. Someone said the early modules are, but then very quickly they shift into the small group style play and kind of the story adventure paths. The adventure path might not be the right word, but and I made the point that there's an economic reason for that as well. It's not simply you don't produce things that the customer doesn't want. So this might have been them responding to consumer demand. And that's affected by a couple of things. It could be that people didn't want to play in that way because they didn't find any value in it. Or it could just be like what I was saying earlier, these clubs didn't exist everywhere. And if they were not likely to exist in a lot of different places, then it might not make sense to try and sell a product that people can't really buy and make use of. So I don't know. The thing is, I don't buy that this was that as the AD&D first edition as uh rules is written with strict timekeeping and all of this was how anyone interpreted how it was supposed to be played or how Gygax thought it was supposed to be played. And there's a lot of evidence that it's certainly not how he ran his games. And I don't know. I don't even care. Like the whole thing is that like people quote Gygax on, everybody quotes Gygax and using him as some sort of an authority. And like, I just don't care that it doesn't matter to me. This guy, like, obviously, yeah, he was he was brilliant in a lot of ways, but um, his vision, certainly the later games that he made, not games I had any interest in playing. Uh, the, there is not just inherent value in what Gygax did, wrote, or said. Now, some people have said that AD&D, like the hardcore people in the BrOSR, at least the people who are taking the idea seriously, have said that like no, but we play AD&D raw, and it is actually interesting how many kind of design issues that a lot of modern games have that weren't present. The issues don't exist because the rules work to solve those issues in the game. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't really like D&D all that much. to be quite honest, I like certain OSR games for sure, but I'm just not a huge fan of D&D to begin with. So like I'm not their target audience, but so I'm kind of like immune to this whole like venerating or idealizing or trying to find like the perfect crystallized, this is the correct way to play D&D, and if you're not playing it, you're not playing it right, and you don't have a right to even talk about this. And it's like but I don't care. Like that doesn't it doesn't affect me. FidoNet was not a thing yet to spread the word. If this one-to-one stuff was mentioned on .edu mailing lists in the 80s, all that stuff would still be there for anyone to find and read about. Yeah, and this is the thing. So I watched like Basic Expert stream with Jeff Rowe. I watched that. This is the other thing. I didn't find like that was an entertaining stream, but I didn't find the ideas that he was talking about very impressive. And then I went back and today I watched a pretty long segment from when Jeff Rowe was on Inappropriate Characters. And man, that was not impressive. Like that was like, honestly, as much, as much as Pundit was, freaking out on people on Twitter, him just talking to Jeff Rowe about the game and his ideas was a lot more devastating in my opinion. But in regards to the timekeeping stuff, there is, Gygax does mention strict timekeeping, and in several different places across the material. And it's not clear though that it meant one-to-one time in the exact way that the BrOSR is talking about one-to-one time. And the thing is, I don't think that there's the one-to-one time thing is like the least controversial aspect of this to me. Like, I think it sort of makes sense for running like these big multi-party groups. Like if you're running one group, if you have just your one table and you've got, even if you're playing multiple parties with the same players within the same world, you would want to keep track of time to see how those parties influence each other. But I think it is more important when you have a large number of players, and that part of it doesn't really bother me. I'm not married to it though. I don't care about it. Everyone gets really, really mad about one-to-one time, and I don't know why. They also, in the BrOSR's defense, when they do describe this style of play, and playing, these multi-party shared campaigns with patrons and everything like that, some people do freak out about it and get very angry at them. So I don't. It is weird. That part of it is weird too. like really, none of this is that controversial in my opinion. D&D was missing a lot of rules and had some contradictory rules from what I understand. All the RPGs I've played since D&D, I've liked better than D&D. Big true. At least my experiences playing AD&D Second Edition when I was young. I played a tiny bit of Third Edition and Pathfinder over the course of the years. One session of Fourth Edition D&D. Never played 5e, but that's correct. Every other game I've played, I've liked more than D&D quite a bit. Until I found Lion and Dragon, and I will be running Wretched very soon. Which actually, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go grab my new Wretched book. Just kidding. I don't know what I did with it. But I do like a lot of the newer OSR games. They're cool. They're interesting. I'm not a huge fan of dungeon. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of dungeon crawling. I think most people who on this channel, they know that. But I do like other games. They're more fun, even if the system doesn't always make sense. Basic Expert stream was a nothing burger. I mean, as far as being like a controversy, yeah, like it was just guys talking about games, which is what he wanted it to be, which I think was the correct thing to do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can talk about this a little bit, but I just have wanted to stay as far away from that drama as possible, as much as possible. But I don't people's like everyone is crazy in my opinion in terms of their politics. Even people that take a lot of standard things that most people would consider like standard political values like for granted, I think is crazy. And so when people have like other extreme opinions, it doesn't phase me. I've been swimming in different fringe political circles for more than a decade, left and right. I've argued with every type, anarcho-communists and syndicalists and mutualists and neo-Nazis and ethno-nationalists, and I've argued with every single one of these groups at some point over the last 15 years or so. So none of this nothing that anyone can say on the internet phases me. I grew up on the internet, so I know what it's like here, and I know it just doesn't. Who cares? Who the fuck cares? Some weirdo said something on the internet. Who cares? I think the whole drama I wish had been completely avoided. I think it was a big loss for everyone, unfortunately. 1-to-1 time is a way to meta and only useful in a club-like scenario where people come and go, not for your weekly game with your buddies. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. The thing is, I think so 1-to-1 time. Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't don't use that at a regular table, but keep track of time, and that's something that I've definitely not done a very good job of in the past, but trying to do better with it, because especially with like running Lion and Dragon right now, like it is going to be moving through the beginning portion of the history of the Rose War, which is if you're keeping track of the time, you're keeping track of the world changing and the events happening. So it's I do think it's important to do that at your table, just not 1-to-1. Trans care a lot about 1-to-1. Thank you for making me say that on stream, Shauner. For some reason, they will die on that hill. Lol. S. Cherry says, sounds like a religious schism to me. Nerds are so weird. Yes, it very much sounds like a religious schism. And the other thing is that it's that makes it sound like some sort of a religious thing is that it's like we have the correct interpretation of the revealed word of Gygax. Like that is how they come off. At least that's how Jeffro comes off. Is that we finally discovered what he really meant. That's the same thing with every fucking split in every religion. I'm not in people's circles. I don't see the drama that channels mention without mentioning. Yeah, I mean, if you're on Twitter though, it was kind of hard to. If you were paying attention on Twitter and following any of the accounts that we follow, then it was impossible to miss. It was a lot of people yelling at each other and for a lot of stuff. Way too meta. If Trump was for 1-to-1, everyone would stop talking about it. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. They might talk about it a lot more and it'd be a lot more annoying. I bought Lion and Dragon 2, but it's going to have to wait. Deadlands is next. I'm actually not familiar with Deadlands, but Lion and Dragon is fantastic. So I hope you enjoy it. Honestly, for Lion and Dragon, I would also buy Dark Albion, the Rose War setting. Super, super good. Like really, really fleshes out the world. Gives you a whole lot to work with. And if you want to run adventures dealing with like the forces of chaos, Cults of Chaos is like one of the best books that I've ever seen. Crispy says, I like Deadlands. What version are you playing? There's too many versions, says Shauner. Yeah, but it's a so I don't know. This my kind of feelings on the BrOSR thing, the drama and stuff aside, like I literally don't give a single fuck about that. Is that I don't think that the ideas are as impactful or interesting as they're claiming, and it's certainly not the one true way to play D&D. And I am not a person who thinks that there is no wrong way to play these games. Far from that. But I think if virtually nobody over the history of the game's existence played in this way, that's a pretty good indication that this was not the true way to play it. It may have been more similar to the kind of primordial soup era of when these games were being created, but I don't think that there was like some perfect style that was lost to time and has been rediscovered by these intrepid archaeologists and game philosophers. That being said, I don't think that style of play is bad as such. I mean, like I said, there is something really kind of, you cannot match the unpredictability of these very large scale, like real player driven things where there's many players. And proof of this is if you look at, there is a video game that has done this, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, Space Sim. It's not a sim. It's more of a spreadsheet simulator. But if you look at EVE Online, which is, I'm not sure if it's still running, but it ran for more than a decade at least. That game was completely player directed, like the economy, battles and factions, everything. And they had the benefit of having thousands and thousands of players, but they had some hyper dedicated people who were the heads of these player created organizations. And there was all sorts of crazy shit that happened, like people doing like years long deep cover, infiltrations of rival corporations, massive thefts of of other factions' assets, crazy things where like they're destroying the assets of other factions that had like real world monetary value to them. Like it's really crazy. The stuff that came out of that requires that you have that scale and that level of player investment. So if you are playing like what the BrOSR is doing does sound interesting, does sound fun. I don't think it's the peak experience of RPGs at all, though. The imperfect experience that I had playing in a large scale game in Vampire the Masquerade, I think was pretty instructive as to some of the weaknesses of the structure of that kind of a game. It is always going to be dependent on the quality of the players. And the more players that you have involved, I think the more that really starts to matter because they can really fuck it up. The other thing is, and this got brought up on the Inappropriate Character stream, as well as Basic Expert stream. And I think it was Victor who brought it up both times. But he was talking about the kind of absurd nature of the OSR games that were being run, like their campaigns. They had like wrestlers and like I don't know, like all sorts of weird stuff in it. I don't remember if it had Muppets, but it might have been something like that. Like they had, it's a weird mishmash of all this really ridiculous, like, haha, isn't this so random, so funny stuff mashed into one world that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't even seem like it's a gonzo setting. It just seemed stupid, like really lame and no sense of realism or verisimilitude. Which for me, it's like, if you're saying that's the peak experience and this, oh my God, this is like the undiscovered territory that we've just brought the light down from the mountain. We are Zarathustra. We have come down from the mountain to give you this. I'm like, you're wrong. You're like, that is legitimately just wrong. And I can't, if that's the kind of game that they play and they want to be taking, and I know they don't care about what I think, but if you want someone like me to take you seriously, it's like, that's the wrong fucking way to do it. Like that is absolutely the wrong way to do it. Deadlands, the Weird West for Suede, running horror on Headstone Hill sandbox campaign. Awesome. Yeah, Nick just picked up Wretched Country second edition. I think he got the PDF. I'm not sure if he's getting the physical copy, but I'm really liking the Wretched products. Like they're really really good, and I think you can run Weird West in Wretched. It's definitely worth checking out. I can't recommend the Red Rooms stuff enough. I like they've got not only I think a great attitude about everything and making their products, and they're not woke. They don't hate you. They just want quality games, but they really make good stuff. This new setting, and I've misplaced the book at the moment. But I got their Wretched Epoch second edition setting book, which I think we may have gone through a little bit of the PDF on a previous stream, but I got the physical copy, and man, oh man, this book is awesome. It is such a good setting. It has got so much flavor, so much inspiration, all of it being drawn, like most of it being drawn from the history of the period. But the art in the book is so fucking good because it's all public domain art novo. It just incredible stuff that perfectly evokes the period because it is the art and the style of the period. And the Lulu copy that I got, like the pages have like a coating on them, so it's really high quality. It's got like a tiny bit of a gloss to it. The color looks amazing. Like it's just a gorgeous book. But more importantly, the setting is really really good, and they're not. Everyone knows them for making men, which is hilarious, and there's no two ways around that, like at all. It is hilarious, but their other stuff is not always like super goofy. Some of it is a little tongue in cheek, like some of it, like they have a Wretch exploitation, which is their exploitation setting, like exploitation and black exploitation genre setting that I'm sure is pretty funny. Like has some tongue in cheek elements to it. Wretched Bastards definitely has some tongue in cheek stuff in it, but it still takes itself seriously on its own terms. But they also have some really really strong settings that are not tongue in cheek at all. Like the Wretched Epoch there's nothing tongue in cheek about it. Like it is a very interesting setting that would be a great alternative to Call of Cthulhu. Great alternative to Candela Obscura, which I tried watching, and it was just the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. But it's great for occult investigation. It would be a perfect match if you wanted to run the Invisible College and have not a modern setting, something a little bit different, but something that where the kind of esoteric and secret societies are built into the very setting itself, and they're having an influence on the world. It's perfect for that. It's really really good, and I cannot wait to run a game in that setting. So go check out the Red Room. I haven't looked at Wretched Country yet, but I suspect that I will like it a lot because I have not had anything from the Red Room that I did not think was of just like really really high quality. Suede is good. I like it, though. I have some issues to work through with the role playing bennies or benefits for those of you who may not be in the know. Suede is Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. Okay, that makes sense. Got it. I just give out a Benny after every encounter. Lol. I don't do it for role play unless something crazy results from it, not just because my buddy is a good role player. That's fair. Shauner says, I love domain play. There are much better ways of doing it than whatever nerds are using. Big agree. And this is another reason why I am not interested in playing in large scale braunstein style games with people like this, is because and as much as they talk about how much they're hitting the gym and lifting and all this stuff, this sort of thing attracts nerds. And the idea that, like, I know that, like, some of them have talked about, like, you could the benefit of this style of play and playing rules as written is that you can theoretically take your character with you on vacation and show up to a game shop, join a game, and you're just in and you're playing, and you can get this huge interconnected thing going. Sort of, I get that, but again, like, that is how you meet a bunch of dweebs and these nerds that are just awful to be around. I hate nerds. I really hate nerds, and it fucking destroys my life that they share my hobbies. My understanding is that Eve employed multiple economists. Probably. I mean, I'm sure they did. I like your solution. I might steal that for my current Suede game. Yo, Matthew Gibbons. Oh, we did the other week we did record our third Cyberpunk session, which is pretty fun. It has a good ending on it. Gibbs is one of our players in it, playing Theo the Netrunner. I simply haven't had time to, chop the little sequences off it, add the music, and toss it up, though. We didn't do that one live. We had to kind of throw it together last second with scheduling. So that was pre-recorded, but that'll be going up relatively soon. So come see what happens to Jack, Theo, and Omen. Also, the early pages of the DMG clearly explain that if you don't like the rules of the game, bloody well change them. The game is yours. These one-to-one BrOSR folks are ellipses foolish. Yeah, and I mean, that's I know, I read that, and his Gygax, and this is something I disagree with Gygax on, because he says early in the DMG, probably on the same page as that these games are nothing but a fun pastime, and of course it does support a serious style of play, but it should not. It should be basically a pleasant diversion, and I fucking disagree with that. So it's like page one, already disagree with Gygax. But yeah, the hostility to Rule Zero, I think they've taken just to absurd levels. They blame it for the current state of role-playing games and all this, and I don't buy that at all. I think that's largely a product of culture. It's not that, like, everyone that Rule Zero is what ruined this, and people just not following the rules and not having any discipline about it has ruined these things, and they're also arguing that changing the rules has caused stasis in gaming, which I completely disagree with. They're completely fucking wrong on that. I do think that people need to try to play a game rules as written the first couple sessions that you're running it, to actually see if the intent of the game designer was correct and if it's useful. But if you have a brain, which I know is a big ask for a lot of people in this hobby, but if you have a brain, you are capable of determining the utility of a given rule. This is not some sort of, received divine message. You're doing a good job selling on the Wretched series. Well, thank you. I mean, they're great games. They're just really fun. Well, I can't say that. They appear to be very fun. I have not run it yet, but I can't imagine this not being fun. The rules are very fun. The settings are just great. They're really, really interesting. And I did do a full. Finally, did, like, most of the time when I get these rule books before I run a game, when I initially get it, I'm like jumping all over the place, just checking out different interesting things. And then before I run a game, I'll sit down and read the book cover to cover. And when I was traveling last week, I was able to read the Wretched core book cover to cover, and that book is just rules, because it's the core. It's the core book for their entire game line for every setting that they have now. It's been consolidated into one book, and the settings have some minor expansions or tweaks per setting. But this has rules for everything. So it was a lot of mechanics, but there's some really cool stuff. Like one of the things I complain about these D20 games is that the D20 is just too swingy. Like you can. My last session of Lion and Dragon, we're in combat and we're just going around in a circle, going through the initiative order of the players and the enemies, and we're all sitting there rolling D20s, and we're just consistently rolling 3, 4, 3, 1, 5. Nobody's hitting anybody. This went on for like 5 or 6 rounds. Nobody landed a blow. Not an enemy, not the PCs. It was really frustrating. And I like it to feel a little bit more in line with the capabilities and the skill level and mastery of the character. The D20 doesn't always accomplish that. Wretched, though, has a couple of mechanics that allows you to get modifiers on your rules, or on rolls. One of these, and they're all optional rules as well. So these are things you don't even necessarily have to use, but given the cinematic flair and flavor that they're going for in a lot of these settings, I think it would be stupid not to use them. You do have something called the Wretched pool, which essentially you get these things called Wretched points for doing wretched things. And when you role play in certain ways or you do certain actions, you will gain a Wretched point that can then be used as a bonus on a roll. And it doesn't seem like there's a limit on the size of the pool or the number of points that you can apply to a given roll, but you can get some bonuses that way. Additionally, you have an optional rule called Wretched Dice, where each player gets, at the beginning of each session, gets a D6, and the GM gets a number of D6s equal to the number of players at the table. And at any given moment, any given time that you're doing a roll, you can opt to use a wild die. And when you roll this D6, if you get an odd number, you just got a penalty to your roll. So 1, 3, and 5, that whatever comes up on the face, if it's an odd number, is a penalty applied to your roll. So it can really screw you over. But if you roll even, that gets added as a bonus. And this is to try and increase the kind of cinematic nature of what's happening in the game. And you earn wild dice in different ways. Like you get 1 per session for sure, but the DM can also award wild dice to players. Additionally, you can use them for it's almost like a minor critical hit. They do have critical hits in the game if you roll a natural 20, and they have critical hit tables by different types of weapon, and whether it's unarmed combat, clubs, blades, guns, whatever it is. They've got critical hit tables for those. But then the wild die, you can use that on any damage roll. You can roll a wild die and get an additional effect, and it's like a miniature and less powerful ultimately thing than getting a critical hit. But it's a lot of fun. It's doing things. The effects are things like, if you're punching them, you knock out their teeth and they permanently lose a point of sex appeal. Which is one of their stats. They have, the 6 standard stats that have all been renamed because they got away from the OGL. Plus, they've also got I think it's like magnetism and sex appeal. Magnetism might be the replacement for charisma, and sex appeal is definitely its own thing. And yeah, but they're games that deal with adult topics, and sometimes in a funny way. There's random whoring tables for carousing events. If you're playing Wretched Bastards, you can get all you can get all sorts of STDs. You can get that in Wretched Epoch as well. And so they deal with sex in their games, and sometimes sometimes sex grape, if you will. And Wretched Epoch does not shy away from the darker aspects of the time period, of there being the open acceptance of these giant anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, or uh, things like just things that happen in history and things like slavery and real world topics. They're just handled, you know, like adults handle them. There's no apologizing for anything. There's no safety tools in these games. They're games for grown-ups, and they assume that you are an adult and that you can handle these things and you can handle them in your games in, a way that is fine for adults. So it's a I don't know. The thing about them, I it it this is not only do I just really like the setting material, but they respect the customer and the player in the way that I want to be respected. Is that you can cross boundaries, you can deal with uh topics and things in play that, may be considered uh extreme or taboo. Um and you can do that you're just trusted to know how to do that. There's no preamble. There's no and a lot of it is like embrace it. Go embrace the all of the adult nature of this stuff. Like it's just really good. I don't know. They are great people. They make great games. They had us on a stream a couple of weeks ago over on their channel. That was a lot of fun. I really really liked talking to them. Um, and they're really fun on Twitter. So I cannot say enough positive stuff about the Red Room. And I will always be hyping their products. And I'll be making videos about them relatively soon as well. Canuckserum says, been gaming since 84 or 85. Few people had access to large clubs, correct, and fewer still could join one, except over long summer breaks from school. We were few and far between. Exactly. So this whole thing of like this was the way it was meant to be played. It's like, I guess they're making a product in a way that can't be consumed by the people they're selling it to in the way that's intended. Uh Vigilantes sounds cool. Yeah, Nick also got Wretched Vigilantes, and he says it's really good. And he just texted me. Supposed to be details on the new iteration of Bloodlines 2 this September. Nice. That's the VTM Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Well, yeah, Men. It's so funny. Men is fucking hilarious. They have an explainer video on it where they go through like the setting and the mechanics on their channel. It is so funny. 28 millimeter. Hey, finally off work. Howdy. Good to see you, man. And if you guys want to go and check out rpgcrusade.com, that's a new website started by 28 millimeter RPG. Has some of your favorite YouTubers writing blogs and posting their videos there. I know Shauner's done some stuff. RPG is dumb slash Mercer Core RPG. I think he's on there. I think we're listed as well. We haven't contributed as of yet. Might take us a while, but go check out RPG Crusade. It's got all the cool immersive YouTubers on there right now. So it's really good stuff. And we wish you luck. Nerds are toxic. Yeah. Okay. And on the subject of nerds being toxic, I think there's two kind of things that happens like when you get these stories of female gamers being like, "Oh my god, these nerds fucking creeped me out during the game," or they were acting in like really overtly sexual, just like crossing boundaries and stuff like that. I have never seen that in an RPG group ever. And I think there's two things that might be happening there. One, you do get some creepy weirdos just wherever you go. Like that is true. Two, I don't hang out with male feminists, so that's probably a big part of it, because a lot of what these people describe is like male feminist behavior. And I think that was it. 1 and 2. Still mad about it. Yep. AD&D Raw has the problem with its 3d6 and order ability scores. You show up at a new game and show your lucky rolls, and people will be like, "Okay, guy, yeah, I mean that, yeah, totally." But sometimes you do roll really high. Like my cyberpunk character. Let me see if I can find his character sheet. That's the main rules. Corpo, here he is. The stats I rolled are absurd. Like, I rolled really high. I have a body of 7, int of 8, cool of 7, MA, which I don't remember what that is, 7, tech of 4, um, ATTR, attrition. I don't know what that stat is. I have a 9. I have a 9 in ref. I have a 9 in empathy. Like, it's fucking. I rolled so high. Like, it looks fake, but we were all making characters together. Sometimes you get really lucky, and then sometimes you don't. Like, sometimes you get Superman, and then sometimes you get like some like idiot fat loser. Homebrewing ruined the rules. Ha! I know that's the whole thing, and like the whole spirit of the early periods of D&D was everything was homebrew. It was everything was there was radical experimentation going on. Don't put all your eggs in one D20 roll. Yeah, exactly. I really hate that die. Your killing blow, missing the big bad. Your character ruined my story's finale. Exactly. Go ahead and re-roll that. Yeah, oh man. 3 Bs. Griffith Morgan was in their actual plays, but not anymore. Is that the Red Room? I don't remember. I don't know when this was. When was this was said and what I was talking about? Is Morgan woke? I don't know. I don't know who he is. TPS is like that too. Players need to be adults. That's correct. Exactly. People need to be adults. And generally, like, I haven't ever had to go over like boundaries of like what might pop up in this game, but it's like I just have a general feel of what I know people are comfortable with that I'm going to play with beforehand. But it's also, if you're choosing a system or you're choosing a game, like if you're choosing like Vampire the Requiem, like, you need to be okay with there being sexual content, sexual violence of like murder and like really awful bad stuff happening, and your characters maybe engaging in that sort of stuff before you play. So I know Shauner always recommends the social contract. Mine is more of an unspoken contract. Oh, I forget the last B. Kind, respectful, and I don't know. D&D players got most of their game tips from the Sears or Kmart sales clerk. I used to work at Kmart. That was my first job. Cool kids. You are welcome, sir. Everybody, again, go check out RPG Crusade. Nerds have that creepy, obscene phone call vibe at times in StreamYard sessions. Yeah, that's 100% true. Red Room is who he's talking about. All right, cool. He did the Blackmore movie thing. Oh, okay. No, actually, well, I see Pundit's here. He can probably speak to this, but I think that I don't know if he's woke, but I think Pundit just did a video on is the Tanisborg book woke, and I believe the conclusion is a resounding no. Morgan is the publisher of Tanisborg. He's not woke, but he is a boomer. Okay. So just as bad. No. Just play with your lifelong homies and you don't have to apply a filter to your game. Yeah. If your homies want to play the game, that's the thing though. Not all of them do. Some of mine do, but it's and even then they're not always the right fit. Like Gibbons in the chat, he's he got me into Vampire when I was 15 years old. And we absolutely will play together for the rest of our lives, but there's other people that I've played with that I'm like, I don't want to do that again. And certain people that, oh man, like when I was in college, and I was studying theater at the time. I was an actor, and I was trying to get a game going, and I was like, God damn, these people are going to be like, they're going to know how to role play. Like they're all taking acting classes, and like, they're going to know how to role play. They'll get this immediately. I'll explain to them the rules and they'll be fine. Every single one of them, terrible. Like, couldn't. And I realized that I think it was because there was no script. There was like absolute paralysis. They had, oh man, like one girl, like very first thing is like, okay, we get to the what do you do part of the first session, explained where the person is, and she's just staring at her character sheet. I was like, the answer is not on the character sheet. It's like that's not how we play the game. Like, vet your homies, yeah, for sure. Yeah, after our last session, he may not play may not play with me after that. You guys will have to tune in, or very least check out the ending to that session because it's pretty good. Oh man. Shauner says Morgan is a great role player when he's with great role players. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Everybody feeds off of one another. If you have great players, the whole game gets taken to another level. I really liked that the Blackmore movie. Two of my favorite parts. I've said this before. I think I said it on Twitter today as well. Is that my favorite moment? The thing that made me just laugh so fucking hard was when the very first Blackmore game is happening, and it's like the first player character death in history happens, and the guy who died got so butt mad that he rage quit for 5 years and wouldn't play Blackmore anymore because he was so mad that his character died. That was hilarious. But when they were kind of describing the process of like working backwards from doing these, it's like strictly doing these war games to adding the element of role play as the commanders of the armies, and then further into the braunstein, excuse me, Victor, if you're out there. And then finally bringing it down smaller and smaller until they're playing, a single character in the Blackmore campaign. And it's like there were just like these giga autists with this all of these grand experiments, and they're reading strategos and all this stuff, and they slowly bring it back to we're playing make believe. That's where they end up. It's like it's pretty incredible stuff. He was stuck with some normies in a game. Meh. Yeah, I mean, I've been stuck in games like that, and I don't perform very well. Perform not in the sense of acting, but perform as in poor performance as a player. That's a real thing. Yeah, it is. Well, and that's the thing that I'm saying, especially about these BrOSR braunstein games, is that it's very dependent on, like any game, it's very dependent on your players, and the weakest player is going to kind of bring that experience down for everybody. And the more players you have, the more open you are about, yeah, we want to do the large scale game, the more likely it is that you're going to get a bunch of knuckleheads. And that's something I simply will not do. Like I've said many times before, no gaming is better than bad gaming. It doesn't always feel that way, but it's the truth. I have gone years at a time without playing games because I refuse to play at shit tables. I've done it before, and it poisons the game, and it makes me hate the hobby. 1981. D&D club members blowing up. Edwin Boyette, story time, who is, I think we follow each other on Twitter, or at least I follow you. When I was a kid, making a character took hours. The kid who DM'd for us generally killed us all in 30 minutes, and we did it all again the next weekend. Yeah. Did they roll hundreds of D20s? Did they roll hundreds of D20s to attack and track every mini's hit points in the mass combats in Blackmore? I don't think they did, no. And I think in Blackmore, it was basically just if you got hit, you died, which is why the guy who had the first player character death was so butthurt. Excuse me. Not smoking enough cigarettes. During lunch in high school, short death dungeons. Yeah, we tried to do that in high school a couple of times, and we just didn't have enough time. Although Gibbons and I, one year we did have an open fourth period shared together where we didn't have a class. We deliberately did that, and we'd have one day a week. We'd have I think it was like a block day where you'd have only 3 of your 6 or 7 classes, but they were for like 2.5 hours a piece. And so we'd just hang out in the library, uh, going over like Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse and like role playing and planning out games and everything like that. It was one of the joys of being a teenage boy, having discovered role playing games, is having unlimited time and peak imagination. Very much miss that. BrOSR guys talk like AD&D Raw is how you handle mass combat. That's why I made that comment. Yeah. Well, I talked about this earlier. I don't remember who said it. It might have been Crossface on Twitter, uh, where he was talking about how AD&D, like, if you just incorporate chainmail rules for mass combat, like, it's kind of built in. Or maybe that was Alexander McCrease in his latest video. He might have talked about that. It might be both of them. But yeah, it's like chainmail and D&D are compatible. I mean, so you can, if you just use the chainmail rules, you can scale up to there's a certain limit on the number of troops that you can feasibly run with that rule set. But you can just kind of have a built-in mass combat rule set for that, where you're dealing with troop units that are going to be like, each mini represents 20 soldiers or something like that. Which is superior to most games. I mean, most games, mass combat systems fucking suck ass. I'm in a 1-to-1 campaign, about 9 to 12 players, with about twice the amount of characters. So far, it's a solid group. The gentlemen are good at rotating the spotlight. That's good, man. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was playing in that massively online vampire game about a decade ago with I think it was probably about 100 players who started out, and there were some there were some characters, and it made the game much, much worse. I made a quick exit after my character died, um, and I discovered that indeed there was not going to be a lot of player agency in that game. But that's good. That's like I said, there is something interesting that comes out of this large scale game where the players are driving everything, that you don't get in a smaller table, because you simply can't. But it's not perfect in my opinion. It's not the pinnacle of the RPG experience for me in particular. Solid amount of out of session play via Discord. So far, it's been an interesting endeavor. I'm about 4 sessions in. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's also, I know that like the patron play is supposed to be done, I think, basically out during the downtime. Correct me if I'm wrong, which I think sort of makes sense. The game I run for my audience is more or less freeze time between sessions. Yeah, that's how I've been playing as well. Sometimes just because we have to end the game, people have to go home, and so it's like, okay, well this is a cliffhanger. We're not going to sit here for, I think it's been 6 weeks. Nah, not 6 weeks, probably like 4 weeks since I played, ran my last session, because we've had our summer vacations, but it would be 4 weeks of people standing in, in one place if we were doing 1-to-1. And someone earlier said that basically like 1-to-1 is good for these large scale. It was more useful for a large scale game like this than it is for just a standard table of 4 or 5 players. Christopher Nolan's Avengers film sounds inspirational for RPGing in. Oh man, I don't like Christopher Nolan. I think he's so fucking overrated. And I'm sure that what's the new one coming out? I'm thinking Oppenheimer. I was thinking Barbenheimer because there's a great meme where they mashed up the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer. I'm sure it's going to have some good stuff in it, and I'm sure it's going to look and sound phenomenal. That is something Nolan's good at, but like most of his movies are not that interesting, and the characters are not that interesting. His female characters are so underwritten and so bad in every movie he's ever done. I really liked Memento. Only need to see it once. I liked Batman Begins. I liked The Dark Knight. They're not perfect movies, but there's some really good stuff in that. But then that third Batman movie was just absolute trash. I actually think my favorite movie that he's done has been Inception. It's not a deep movie, but it is a complicated movie. Like, you need to be paying attention the whole time, but there's nothing particularly deep about that movie. But I was not really a fan of Interstellar, despite its great visuals. And I didn't see Dunkirk, didn't care to. I'm not a huge fan of Nolan. I think he's a fucking pompous asshole. Comic-Con started today. That's sad. Not those cheap, the Comic-Con, not the cheap knockoffs. Yeah. RuneQuest suggests player characters adventure like once a season. Good way to stretch out the time so you don't have a 19-year-old 12th level wizard. Yeah. No, I understand. That is a reason that I am going to take more care of time tracking in my own games. Obviously not 1-to-1, but that is true. It's very easy for you to have, 5 days of game time have passed, but it's been 30 sessions and we're all 15th level now. Or, I know the math didn't work out on that leveling, but yeah, that is a cool way to do it. I think that Mr. Max has mentioned that Pendragon does the same thing. Like, you adventure in like the spring and summer maybe, and then in the winter, everybody's back in the castle and whatnot, and time advances and you're going through the great Pendragon campaign. Wandering Mage. I need to find a good role-playing focus group. Haven't had much luck in the role-play department in my play history. I've not had the best groups. Man, I know. I feel that. It's hard. When you find good role players, you got to latch on for dear life. The internet is a great place to meet those people. Still hard to find, but it's going to be easier than finding people in your own immediate vicinity. Like, I'd recommend, again, go to rpgcrusade.com, check that out. 28 millimeters new site, because I think they'll probably have some sort of thing for organizing games there, but it's all about dedicated to immersive roleplay and to finding people who want to roleplay. So definitely check them out. rpgcrusade.com. RPG a day starts next month. Remember those? Oh, vaguely. I mean, like, just very vaguely, but I never participated. I don't even know if I have enough. Do I have 30 RPGs? Probably not. No, I definitely don't. Because I have several games with multiple supplements for each game. I've got several first-time D&D players. So much of it is learning fundamentals, but I let the players pursue what they will without railroading. I'll give them some leads and we adjust on the fly. Yeah, exactly. That is exactly how you're supposed to run a game. To run a successful game is that you provide some hooks that, things that might be interesting to them, and they will make an adventure out of that, whether the DM wants them to or not. But yeah, the idea should always be to, and this is what I told, because my group that I'm currently running a game for, 2 of the players have never played a role-playing game in their life prior to this. And basically, like, they showed up, we spent a couple hours making the characters. It does not take that long to make a lion and dragon character, by the way. It took like 8 minutes, I think, for me and Nick to make one, but it was just explaining the rules, going through the different attributes and roll results and answering questions and all that stuff. But once we had characters made, it was like, holy shit, this took a while. We need to get started. And I went in with zero prep, and I told them, okay, so this is how the game works. I'm going to describe where you are, where you're starting, what happens, all the people you run into, and you can do anything that you want. Like, you have the freedom to make the choices. Anything that's possible. I said, obviously, it's like, you can't say I fly or something like that. But if you frame it like that, I think the players latch onto it. And it's honestly, it's better if they've never seen like Critical Role or anything like that, because they'll have kind of warped expectations as to what the game is. But yeah, teach them the rules and make it clear that the game is in their hands. They can kind of, if they, you'll probably provide some interesting stuff in there, and that's for them to pursue and screw around with. I saw Tenet twice in theaters, and both times walked away like meh, but I do like the Prestige a lot. I do like the Prestige as well. And I refused to see Tenet because I knew it was going to be incomprehensible nonsense. Dunkirk was meh. I knew it was going to be meh as well, so I didn't see it. Wandering Mage, do you have a YouTube channel? That is a good question. Do you? Nah, you're just a watcher. You should definitely start making YouTube videos, though. It's a lot of fun. Shauner has 5 RPGs. I bet it's Travelers Edition 1 through 5. There's a disproportionate amount of gingers who play RPGs. I am one too, not hating. I don't know. I've only played with one other ginger, and that was when I think I did that game shop session of 4th edition D&D. And he was just walking around. Anything that he did, he would just, because he was playing a cleric of Palor, he'd just say, in Palor's name, I do this. And it got very annoying very quickly. 28mm says, I have about 10 RPGs. I've just narrowed down to BX, AD&D 1E, and I'm following Axe. Yeah, I'm probably, when Axe 2 Kickstarter goes up, I will almost certainly be backing that. I backed Shadow Dark. I'm waiting. I think they just charged us for shipping. So I'm assuming those books will be out relatively soon. I also backed Knave 2E. And then I just bought also Lone Wolf Fists is it's like a post-apocalyptic kung fu game with like over-the-top action where you can like throw tanks and stuff like that. Reason being, I had posted about Exalted and how, oh man, how they've really raped that game to death, for lack of a better term. And this guy just posted, he's like, yeah, that's why I made my own Exalted game and, made a rule system that makes sense. And it's not Exalted, but it is a similar vein. So I've got that coming from Drive-Thru at some point. I've got Lion and Dragon, Invisible College, Vampire the Requiem, Exalted, Within the Ring of Fire, Wretched, which includes Bastards and Epoch. That might be it for core game systems, and the rest is source books. Edwin Boyette's Storytime. That's a name. Sorry. Going to upload any actual plays? Uncertain. I run a Storytime channel where I dramatically perform books. Not all of my players are voice actors, so I'm wary of making them self-conscious. Yeah, I mean, part of that, though, is when the camera's on, the pressure's on a little bit, which is a little bit of a good thing because it's still, you kind of forget after a little while, but everybody kind of brings their A game. But at the same time, I will say, even though I think a lot of the OSR people would consider what we do to be highly theatrical and not what you're supposed to do in D&D, certainly not what you're supposed to do in D&D. At this channel, watching, even if you're doing a highly theatrical game, watching RPGs, people play RPGs, is nothing like playing them, and it's not an entertaining experience for the most part. Which is why Critical Role is not actually an RPG. It's finally cooling off to go outside without death occurring. Jury's out on that on fucking Texas. Let me see what the temperature is. It is still 90. Well, yeah, it's 91. That's not too bad. We play in my Discord, and anyone is welcome to spectate. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so it's not recorded, but it is live for people. Make a YouTube channel and do videos on role-playing. People will find you. That is true. I'm not a ginger, but it's a very common family trait. One of many products of centuries of aristocratic inbreeding. We're like the Polish Targaryens. Is it true that being ginger grants immunity to soul drain? That's true, but it also disqualifies you from being in jazz band. Cameras are needed. Cameras and a decent mic. And thankfully, decent microphones are cheap nowadays. Not this one, but I've had this for like 15 years. Prowlers and Paragons might be my favorite superhero game. Might be good for Exalted. Combat is crunchy. Out of combat skill use is quick and narrative. Yeah. This Lone Wolf Fist game that I got, I started looking at the PDF and the system. I figured because this guy had posted on my Twitter post about it that he was probably like one of these OSR guys who just also liked Exalted or something. So I was anticipating when I bought it that it was going to be like somehow they did Exalted with D20, and it's not. Like it's a completely different system. It's like based on you have like a trait called effort, and every point of effort that you have is a d10, and for any like a combat round will happen, you roll your d10s, and then you group all of the dice that came up the same face with each other, so you get sets of dice, and a set can include only one die, and then it's based on, basically it's like the number of dice in the set determines the tens, and the face is the ones. So if you have 3 8s, that's 38, and then you are distributing, you're using those sets for your attacks, but also for your defenses. So it's like if someone attacks you with a large set, you may want to defend with one of your large sets, or you might just want to, like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It was very, very different than any other system I've seen. So I'm actually very intrigued. The layout on the book is okay. There's a lot of blank space. It's the 2-column design for the most part. And there will be portions that I think could have used more artwork to fill it out, to keep the pages, a lot of them, full. There's just a lot of like between sections. There's these giant like blank spaces in it. But it sounds cool. I mean, the style it's written in is very fun. So I'm looking forward to actually checking that out. Ferric Zorn, this be a good stream. You're goddamn right. This is Black Lodge Games Inception here. Ferric Zorn, I believe, is Nick, if I'm incorrect. If I'm not incorrect. I also like Prowlers and Paragons. I can send you the link, man, if you want to join by phone too, if you're not on a plane or anything. Yeah, let me send that to you. All right. Maybe Nick will join via cell phone. We'll see. Maybe not. From like an old Palladium book from a car phone. Yeah, I mean, I also was kind of planning on going through a couple of different systems for social skills in different games. At the very beginning of the stream, I was talking a little bit about, I've kind of come to some conclusions about reaction roles after thinking about this shit for months and months. And I'm writing a very lengthy blog post about this. It's actually gonna be very long, but I came to some conclusions after thinking about our conversation with Pundit about reaction roles and social systems in social maneuvering, I guess you could call it, in various RPGs. And so I had gone back because I couldn't quite remember how it worked in the New World of Darkness, which is a game that I played a lot of. And it was pretty much what I remembered, which was that, we got Nick here. Hello.
Yo, what's going on? Hopefully you can hear me.
The second I put him on, he's frozen.
Oh, no.
I can't hear you.
Let me turn my camera off. Can you hear me now? No. Damn.
Yeah, unmute him.
Can you hear me now?
I can see your little thing making noise, but I can't. Oh, goddamn. No, this is a sound settings. I can hear you. Oh my God. You guys, we had the last time that we recorded something together, we had some massive troubleshooting issues like we usually do.
Of course.
Yeah, our boomer moment. But Nick was having all these problems with his camera. He finally gets it working. The second he gets his camera working, he can't hear me anymore. And he's like, what the fuck? So we're like troubleshooting everything. I'm having to like type stuff to him. He's fucking losing his shit. He's restarting his computer. And then I realized that I had somehow turned my mic input all the way down, and it was my fault the entire fucking time.
Yeah.
But just like that, I had my my headphones all on monitoring this and not on any of the sounds from the computer.
Yeah. Coming in from the dregs of South Jersey here.
Yeah.
On the telephone. This is good to know. This actually somewhat works, as disheveled as I am. Zero camera skills here.
It's all
That's
good.
all right. Came in, talk. What was the deal about Prowlers and Paragons?
I don't know. Someone was talking about that.
On that. Oh, people. Somebody liked it. I like that. It's definitely a.
Aren't you Ferric Zorn?
From what I understand, yes. But someone also commented on it. I said I liked it also.
Oh, right.
Even if the from what I recall and can understand, the creator or the developer are all insufferable shitlibs, but many such cases. But from what I recall, a fairly good system for running supers. Although I did I did get see if the phone. I did pick up what is it? Vice Sand Cove. Sand Cove Gets the Blues from Red Room and Wretched Vigilantes, talking about supers games. Really good stuff. They've definitely maintained their level of quality. Hair's going everywhere.
I was singing their praises for like 20 or 30 minutes earlier.
Nice.
Twice.
At minimum. Yeah, really good stuff. I haven't flipped through. I haven't read all the way through Wretched Vigilantes, but they do a very good job of what would you say? Putting together like I don't know, something like it gives me very Sin City vibes. Very Sin City vibes, Watchmen vibes, that kind of level. Rather than your typical I don't remember what the different flavors and tones of the superhero style, but there are rules for it. But I probably would not use this to do I don't know, X-Men or well, maybe I would for X-Men, but to do like capes,
Superman,
caped crusaders type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something more like Prowlers and Paragons may be better, but again, I don't know. I have to dig in more into the book.
Yeah.
But
also, if you don't have the Wretched core book, Miguel posted on Twitter that now every physical copy, if you buy a physical copy of a Wretched book, then you can get the core book. Like if you get one of the settings, I mean, you can get the core book PDF for free.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I will have to take advantage of that offer.
Yeah. Which is also a note for you guys. If you buy any of their settings, you can now get the core book PDF along with it for free.
Nice. Yeah.
Which I highly recommend. Like I said, they make great products, and you got Wretched Country, right?
The PDF of it, yes. I have not delved into it yet. I think the print copy may have just gone out to sale. I don't recall. I definitely want the print copy.
Yeah.
Of Wretched Country. I'm very interested in digging more into Western RPGs. I think we've talked about it before. It's a genre that I think should be more prevalent, and I'm not sure why it's not.
Curse of Yig, I think it was Curse of Yig earlier, was talking about a Weird West game, as was Crispy. And so I recommend it also to check out Wretched Westerns. What the fuck? I said the name like 2 seconds. Wretched Country. Yeah, I was like, I said it like 2 seconds ago, and it was literally just like blank in my head.
Yeah.
the NPC static, like
yeah.
Shauner asks, does Nick remember the Vampire the Masquerade YouTube experiment done on Google Hangouts back in the day? Yes, he does. And do you remember how it ended?
Yeah, yes. How it went, how it ended.
which Shauner informed me that it ended because the player spreadsheet got leaked and people got players got jealous of other players and what they had.
Yeah. Very, yeah.
Lots of favoritism and
lots of favoritism, lots of no doubt very feminine behavior.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, I can only imagine, and in front of the cameras as well. But for some, but yeah, it was a weird. You know, we've talked about this. It was a weird, wild moment, a unique moment in like internet history and RPG history. And it worked for like a moment as the sort of the sun and the moon and the stars were in the right place in orbit, and for that moment, things really clicked. And then it degenerated as many things do. But still, a very definitely an ambitious experience, and something that grew out of, I think, in large part, the what would you say, the broader RPG brigade. I don't even know if that term was
it was in use at the time. It was.
Yeah, and the broader, well, not the broader, but there was a focus on more immersive style, which we've also talked about before, and it sort of grew out of that. The heyday of the 20th anniversary editions of the World of Darkness products were in the air.
Yeah, that's probably why it got popular again, was because the V20 had
height of his popularity.
Yeah, because that was like, you're right, 2013 maybe 2012, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, something like that. 2012, 2013. It feels longer. In some ways, it feels longer than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it must have been around that time, 2013.
Yeah.
2013. The RPG experiment may have been a little bit later, maybe 2014.
I don't know, because I remember.
I couldn't tell you.
I could probably tell you if I go to.
So we did find some videos, and they were
not that
like 8 years ago, something like that.
I think there was one from like 6 years ago, which is really seems crazy. That like it would have been.
That seems impossible, and yet it must be the case.
Right. Let's see. Robert E. Howard wrote great Western stories, heavy on comedy. Pistol Politics is a classic. I'm a big fan of Howard.
Yes.
So I will have to check that out. I gotta finish the Conan stories. I read like the first.
Oh, really? Haven't? Oh.
No, I haven't finished all of them. I have like the giant thick one with like the golden embossed on it. But I read like, I got that for Christmas. I don't know, probably like 2016 or 2017, and I read like half of them in like a week or week and a half.
They're quick.
And then
I do like short stories.
Yeah, they're like bubble gum for the mind. It's awesome.
Yeah. I always prefer. There's not as much material. He's kind of like a proto Conan, but something about Kull the Conqueror. I was always drawn more to Kull than to Conan, for whatever reason. Even though, of course, Conan has many of the the better stories. Tower of the Elephant. Queen of the I don't remember
the Black something.
Black Coast or something.
I think that was the last one that I read.
Kull the Conqueror, Kull of Atlantis, before it sank into the deeps.
Wandering Mage says, Shauner, I've considered making a channel. Got a few other things to take off first. Feel like I need more playtime, but I also know I could rant for an hour about how not to run Curse of Strahd 5e. Do it, man. Do it.
Do it.
People will watch it.
People will watch it. You don't need to be credentialed. You don't need to be accredited.
Yeah.
I mean, look at me. Look at me on this phone camera in this empty room. This is my childhood room. Back home for until Sunday.
Yeah.
All the shit has been taken down off the walls. Doing the
And
same
thrown in the trash.
same thing I was doing 10 years ago.
Wandering Mage, the perfect subject to rant about on a new channel. Correct.
Very correct.
Shauner says the woke ruined the brigade when it was SJWs on Google Plus.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the woke were part of the brigade too.
Yeah, I was out before that happened. Sorry, my dog is freaking out. Anna, come here. Come here. Chill out. I'm sure she was looking out the window and saw another dog.
Yeah. No
anyway. Hey, come here. Chill. Chill the fuck out. You're fine. It's just another dog.
What we got here?
We performed about a dozen of the Conan stories I read with a live audience. Tower of the Elephant. That's awesome.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah, he was saying earlier on his channel, he does like dramatic readings of short stories and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really
artist
cool.
Illustrating the scenes. That's fucking rad.
That's really
good show,
cool.
Black Lodge. I'll catch you in the Twitters. Thanks, man. Thanks for stopping by. We really do appreciate it. And I will see you on Twitter.
Yeah, right on, man. Much obliged.
Okay, are you chilling out?
That's really cool.
Are you done?
Yeah, you should if you do more of them, you should put them up on YouTube. Maybe you have already and I haven't seen the comment.
Yeah, we'll have to let me see if it this is the annoying thing about StreamYard is you can't just like click on the person and go to their channel. So I have to go let me see. I'll do it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're yeah. Shauner says, I want to say Gamergate was a thing around the time the brigade imploded. Yeah, that sounds about right. Because that would have been like 2014, probably.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goobergate.
Yeah, that was around that time.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm glad I was out of that by that point. I'm sure those people were completely insufferable.
A lot of them were very difficult to watch.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say... right before you hopped on, I was kind of circling back a little bit to just the social mechanics stuff and was about to talk about the New World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness God Machine, how they handle social encounters.
Okay.
And the system of like doors that it has. So essentially,
doors and keys or whatever.
Yeah, like the World of Darkness games. If you're not familiar, it just uses the dice pool system. It's attribute plus skill. You roll your d10s and count your number of successes. And for New World of Darkness, basically, you only needed, unless it was like an opposed roll, you only needed one success in order to succeed. 5 or more successes was considered like exceptional. And so in the first edition of Blue Book World of Darkness, before the God Machine Chronicle, the social skills were a mishmash of just individual rolls made by the player. Like, say you're trying to intimidate someone, you might roll strength plus intimidation, or if it's verbal intimidation, it might be your manipulation plus intimidation. You roll that, you get a success, then you succeed in intimidating the person, whatever it is. But some things were opposed rolls. And it seemed, reading it last night, again, it seemed kind of arbitrary which ones were opposed rolls and which ones were not opposed rolls. And in the God Machine rules update, they changed things a little bit. You're still making these rolls, but they introduced this system called doors, where you have to, basically it's like the target of your social manipulation, whatever it is, you take the lower of their wits or composure. And so say that value is 2. That means you have 2 doors that you need to open. And so you have to do basically 2 rolls associated with this in this manipulation in order to achieve whatever your goal is. So it's more explicit. It's basically, and there's things that modify this like as well. Like if you are doing something that would cause them to experience a breaking point, then that adds an additional 2 doors no matter what. So you'd now be dealing with 4. And you
Right.
have what looks a little bit similar to the reaction roll table. It's like you start with the player declares what they're trying to do, what they want as the result, and what they're trying to do, and then the GM, determines it has to be a reasonable goal. You can't say hand over all of your life savings and kill your family in front of me and then jump off a bridge.
Right.
That would not be
Yeah.
like, you can't do that. It would have to be
Yeah.
some sort of a reasonable request that could plausibly happen. Then it's like you take, based on the initial impression that the character has to you, determines the length of time it takes you to break through each door.
Yeah.
So say you want someone to hand over, to give you $500, and they're resisting this. They have 2 doors and they don't like you. It might take a week to break down each door. And so you're basically, it's like you have to go through and sort of role play this a bit, your attempt of what you're going to try to do, whether you're trying to like bribe them or whatever it is. You get that first door down, and then you're gonna have you have to succeed on that. You have to then, and if you fail, any subsequent attempt is going to be at like a -1 penalty. If you succeed and you get through, then you break down the second door, the social door, whatever it is, then the character has to do what you say. Obviously within reason, and it's something that you then negotiate with the GM and the player negotiate what the outcome is. This seems terrible to me.
Yeah, I remember not liking it initially when I read it, and I haven't read it in 10 years, something like that. And the way you're describing it seems, on the one hand, they're putting more thought into the mechanic, or how to make it realistic, which I don't know, maybe there's some creative juice that can be drawn, but this sounds like misery to keep track of. It takes me out completely of what is the most immersive part of any RPG session, which is the actual social dynamic. Me trying to convince you of something or interact about something that matters, right? If I'm trying to convince you of something, the topic at hand is something that matters a lot to me and to you. Otherwise, it would be, why bother? It would be, there's no, it would just happen, right? It would be a throwaway conversation. This seems awful.
Yeah, and it's one of those
overly
things.
Narrativistic.
Yes.
Like mechanics.
Yeah. And it's making me question again. I'm going to need to do another close reading of Requiem 2nd edition, because there are a lot of these mechanics that are geared towards fueling roleplay. And sometimes giving you, like, in specific circumstances, like if you have conditions, to resolve certain conditions, you have to do certain things. And so and you have to go role play those things out. And I kind of liked that previously. It's been a while since I gave that a serious look, though, and I need to kind of reevaluate that. But yeah, this is the social mechanics thing. This is, like you said, for us, like that is some of the most enjoyable stuff in the game, is like going out and like doing these social encounters and manipulations and meeting these characters and NPCs, and coming to hate or love these people. Like it's so much fun, and social mechanics always get in the way. I was trying to talk about this earlier in the stream, but it's like we usually, I mean, I've made, I think, 2 social roles in our Cyberpunk game. And it was like you said earlier when we were talking offline, it's like, attribute plus skill versus just a DC, a difficulty.
There are no social mechanics. In Cyberpunk, it's just social skills, seduction, leadership,
right,
etc., etc.
Right. And like the more complicated social skills get, the more that they interfere with roleplay, I think. And you sort of need, for certain circumstances, you sort of need a way to mechanically resolve these things. Especially if there's supernatural influence involved, like for sure there I'd need some sort of a role there.
Yeah.
But even if like you're trying to intimidate someone or whatnot, it's not always clear if that's going to be able to come off in roleplay alone. And especially if you're not very good at role playing, like if you can't sit there and talk in character, and you're trying, like, and you're making an honest try, but your character's stats, like say your charisma on your character sheet is way higher than your actual charisma as a human being. It's very hard to try and to display a much higher charisma than you actually have. So in that case, like, yeah, obviously I think roles matter in that sort of a circumstance. And so with the reaction roll thing, it was such a weird mechanic to me because it was literally completely the opposite of how social mechanics are handled in every other game I've ever encountered. Where it's player has a target and they are trying to do something to them socially and they roll and they do it. Whereas this, it reverses it and puts it on the target as the target's reaction. And I think, and we've talked about this offline, but I think it's actually superior to do it this way, where it's you're just taking the recipient of whatever the manipulation is and the specific circumstances of that character and using the modifiers, to adjust where that average roll is going to lie. I think it's a superior social mechanic than social mechanics in other games. However, however, it still gets in the way of role playing for us, and it disrupts the flow. And I can see circumstances where I will use it, but I generally don't use social mechanics very much anyway. So it's like, this still doesn't seem like something I'm going to use all that much.
Right. And I mean, I had mentioned this briefly to you when we were talking offline. If you're looking for, I don't know, 100% realism, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there is no mechanical conceptualization or system or die roll or anything that is going to capture accurately the intricacies of human social interaction. On the other hand, sure, if you don't use any mechanics, it could be argued that I don't know, and it has been argued online and elsewhere that you're leaning too much on maybe an out-of-game presentation of your character, or as a GM, your, I don't know, habits, tendencies, your biases to feed into a scene more often or more strongly than otherwise would be the case, and so wouldn't be realistic. Maybe, maybe not. But again, the focus from our perspective is the role play is what matters, and the immersion is the character is what matters more than anything else. So generally speaking, I at least am going to, more often than not, if I have to choose between one, I'm going to choose between more role play, even if I don't know, my what's the buzzword? My implicit bias, my unconscious bias is going to come to the forefront, which I first of all I disagree with, but in as much as that is is true. Let's give the devil his due. You can make that argument with any aspect of role play at all, not just social mechanics. So if you're overly worried about biases or not if you're worried that you can't role play properly in this situation, either a GM determining the reactions and the behavior of an NPC or a player portraying a character, I don't see why this is a special moment. That criticism should be applied to every aspect of role play. And why are you role playing if you're worried that you can't, that it's impossible? It's an impossibility to role play. So, some interesting creative insights, things to think about. But like you said, it's not my first choice, generally speaking, in the moment, in a scene, in a session. I am confident, and I know in my ability as a player or as GM to handle this realistically.
Yes, and the whole point is that if I think this actually would be a pretty good tool if you are a new GM and you're not confident in
especially
and you're if you haven't run that many games and you're not confident that you really can just handle all these different characters, and like, well, I don't know how they would act. Like this will help a lot. Like it's a good tool. Yeah, but it's also, there's circumstances where I can see, like if I'm kind of taken out of the scene for a moment or for whatever, and you're trying to get back into it, it could be useful, like to, for certain circumstances. But for the most part, if we have our flow going in a game, what you're doing when you're role playing is playing pretend. And I'm a fucking kung fu master at playing pretend. Like I'm a goddamn like I am a like 35th level kung fu master at playing pretend.
Epic
so like
levels have been achieved.
Right. This mechanic is not something that I find all that useful, because it will slow down and get into the way. And the way Pundit described it was that you're factoring in all of these potential modifiers for the social roles, and that includes things like someone's primary values, all the situational modifiers, how well your role playing is, if your plan even makes sense. There's all these things, and then you can make a roll, and then you get a result. For me, it's like, and he even said at the, for him, this is basically an implicit thing that he's doing now. He's not sitting there, like doing a bunch of addition in his head. He can kind of intuit exactly what the modifiers are going to be at this point, because he's run it this way for so long. Similarly, like that's what I'm doing when I'm role playing, is I am intuiting all of these things. Sometimes it is explicit. Like you are thinking about certain things explicitly, but the longer you've been playing an NPC, the more that you're in their shoes, like you don't, like, for the most part, I don't need that at all. Like the whole thing is that, and this is the fun for me, is this dance, this like needing to like bob and weave, roll with whatever the players are throwing at you. Like that's
like we said, fun. This is why it's not acting. We don't know what we're going to say before we say it.
You don't know what's coming at you, and you don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what the character is going to say, and this is something that we've been kind of talking about offline as well, is that a lot of people, when they're saying like you'll just be leaning into your biases, or if you, like what we're saying, like we've said things like, I know my NPCs well enough, even if they're new NPCs, that I know how they're going to react to things. And that doesn't mean we know explicitly what they will do beforehand. It's more in the same way that like someone who's a trained fighter, they've spent all this time practicing and training and sparring with people. When they're in a fight and someone's throwing punches at them really quickly, they're not explicitly thinking, okay, a right hook is coming at me right now, which means
Yeah.
I'm going to react in this way. It's not that. It's they, it is, they are so trained at that they are moving and reacting, like
the
it's
reactions
so
are
quick.
internalized from experience and training.
Right. Exactly. And that's what we're doing with our NPCs. It's like we don't know what they're going to say or how they're going to act. It's that we do in this in the sense of we have a sense of who the person is, and we can try and inhabit that character and then roll with everything. But that doesn't mean we in a predetermined way know what they're going to do. So that's
exactly.
That's just a little clarification there. I was not fully into the hobby yet around the time of Gamergate, so I have no idea what the brigade is. Is it worth knowing? Not really. I mean, it was a fairly large
It doesn't really exist anymore.
Community. It doesn't exist anymore.
They were just
can attest to the Kung Fu mastery. Thank you, Matthew Gibbons.
Yeah,
Nick as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh hell yeah, Gibbs. That's right. Theo himself.
Theo the Netrunner. Yeah. I will have that game put up.
Stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no Cyberpunk this weekend because I'm up here in New Jersey.
No new game, but our last session has still not been posted, so there will be Cyberpunk released this weekend. Yeah.
Yes.
For people to consume. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's kind of the gist. I'm gonna have a whole lot more to say on this and in more detail on the blog post I'm working on. But
very excited to dig into that to the blog, the new chapter of the Black Lodge Games experience.
Right.
It's, multimedia enterprise. That
exactly
this is.
Empire, if you will.
Empire. You might say.
It's but the big kind of takeaway was it's kind of like it made me rethink social skills as such in role-playing games, and I do think it's a better replacement than most other games have come up with.
Straight skill roll.
However, I was still right about it getting in the way of role play.
All that being said, nothing
has changed, and I was right all along.
No ground has been given. Make no mistake.
Make no mistake about that.
Yes. Yeah. I do also like with regard to the the notion of a reaction roll or a social mechanic that the GM is interfacing with and not the player. So the player is with a straight skill roll, make me a seduction roll, make me a leadership roll, make me an intimidate roll, a persuasion check. I, as the player, am being taken out of the moment to make a die roll, interpret the die roll, and depending on how you're, depending on how you're interfacing with the mechanics, you're rolling it first and then trying to role play that out, or you're role playing the scene and then interrupting it and then trying to hopefully the die roll sort of makes sense with how you're presenting things, and maybe you'll add an addendum if there is. Regardless, point is you're being taken out of the immersive experience.
Yeah.
For the GM, we've said many times before, and it's correct. You especially have made the point. The GM is also an active player in their own way. They are not a facilitator, right? As such, they are not outside. As such, they are not entertainers, certainly, or directors. But the GM does have more. That their immersion is in many ways different, and we touched on this in one of our earliest episodes of the podcast.
But you are role playing. Yeah,
you are role playing, and so I would prefer, if I had to use a mechanic, something that if I'm the GM, I can look at that and I can internalize and incorporate that and sort of move forward, and the players remain they just do the same. They're just role playing their character. If I'm the player, I just want to be role playing my character. So I do think there's a another, I guess, mark of superiority there.
Yeah. And it makes more sense even at a conceptual level.
Yeah.
And this was something that out of like an ascending versus descending AC, and this will be included in the article. I don't have it at the moment, but there was a tweet from Pundit where he explained conceptually ascending AC and the attack roll is, it's some bit of luck, which is the die roll, plus your skill and mastery of arms versus someone's toughness. This is something that makes sense. And when you do THAC0, it's like your mastery of arms versus the inverse of their toughness. Like it makes like conceptually, it makes no fucking sense. Even though
I understand
the formula, the
I get
formula
it,
is not that different. The math is not that like crazy and
more
different.
steps for same thing.
Yeah, more steps per step. But it's like it makes no sense. Whereas the reaction roll, I think, also conceptually makes more sense in terms of the social manipulation and stuff. Because if you're having like even like opposed roles, like the skill roll of like this is diplomacy, unless you're doing something that is directly related to like the procedures of diplomatic relations between nations, that should not be something that you can just say, oh well, I'm using my diplomacy and that's just everybody has to be my friend, or like
right.
The skill is very narrow. This really is based more on your own kind of charisma, your plan, and it's like I understand the skill roll, but it's like you are attempting to use your skill to do something to influence the behavior of the other person, and then the other person is usually doing some sort of opposed skill roll. And so it's like when you're having a conversation with someone and you're trying to persuade them of something, or even lie to them and manipulate them, you're not sitting there thinking like actively being like, okay, I'm going to use this skill that I've trained in. And the person that's on the other side of the conversation is also, they may not even be aware that you're trying to manipulate them, but they're also not like, okay, I have been trained to resist manipulation. Yeah. And like, we're both doing something. Whereas the reaction roll really is more of like, I attempt to influence you in some way. I do something based on the circumstances. The person in the moment has an implicit reaction. It may be subconsciously driven. It's not something that, it's just a judgment on how they reacted. Like it does make more sense conceptually, which is why, like when I kind of, when I got it, when I analyzed, like thought about it that way, I was like, okay, this actually is just the superior thing because it makes more sense.
There are very few circumstances where you're bringing to bear a specifically trained skill or set of skills. Like you said, you're not, unless you are navigating a social affair in a very Byzantine and overwrought set. You're not engaging in a royal ceremony, right? And if you were, okay, your bureaucracy or your etiquette, how well you do the moves, how gracefully or whatever the case may be, may affect your bearing in whatever. Or if usually you're not overtly engaged in like a you're not like pundits on a stage engaging in like a Socratic debate, as you know what I mean. Like it's not, you're not bringing like the skill of rhetoric, the skill of argument itself, explicitly to bear. It would be one thing if
you were doing that, it would make sense to do a skill roll.
Sense. I think
it would make sense, or at least to use that as a modifier to.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Rather than a success failure,
yes,
sort of dynamic. Okay, I would
it's
even,
it's an adjustment
that actually would,
on someone's
it's an
response.
adjustment. How well you do determines what the adjustment is up to a certain point. You roll a natural 20, it doesn't mean success. It doesn't mean a plus 900 to your seduction roll, your intimidate roll, whatever the case may be.
I rolled a natural 20 personally, therefore the whole crowd is convinced.
It's convinced. Exactly.
Exactly the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely looking forward to talking more and hearing more and reading, as you all should, on the upcoming blog post.
Yeah. That might be out this weekend. What's tomorrow? Friday?
Tomorrow
we'll see
is
if
Friday.
it's out this weekend. If not, it'll be sometime early next week. But yeah, that'll be the kind of first big blog post we got going out. And then we'll just kind of write those as topics deserve more of a deep dive than maybe a video or a stream like this merits.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we'll have merch coming soon.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it is and we'll be hawking that on these videos.
Left, right, and center.
Yeah, you'll be able to buy them from the video itself, or at least link directly to our store, because we will be monetized.
That's right.
Assuming that YouTube approves us. But we're like on like literally the threshold. Close. We'll probably pass it after this stream wraps up. Yeah.
Yes. Very cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. And with that, I think I've been going for about 2.5 hours. I think it is time to wrap up. But I'm glad you could join, man. I told everyone when we
half hour here.
I told everyone when we started the stream that you were no longer a part of Black Lodge Games. That we had a falling out.
The Pepsi, the Dr. Pepper Mr. Pibb dynamic was too much to bear. Too much to bear.
The hatchet that could not be buried.
All over. Nice.
All right, man. Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop the stream. Thank you all so much for
thank you all. Very much obliged.
And we will see you next time.
Take care.